I tried to be the kind of dad who could hear what his children wanted to say to him. I wasn't the kind of dad who said, ask your mother. I had my own opinion. And if it was appropriate for me to respond, I responded if the question was put to me. If it was something that wasn't appropriate for me to deal with and was correctly something that she could do and had responsibility and jurisdiction, I said, go ask your mother. And Rob's show yesterday, and we're going to do this again, did a scene with James Dean. For those who remember that show, and hopefully you'll hear it when I do it again. When James Dean pleads with his dad to defend him against his mother. Dad, say something. Dad, defend me. Please say something. Tell her something. And today men are silent. Men feel more lost and powerless in their homes than in their offices, and that's why they run to their offices, because in their offices they have more control, they have more respect, they have more confidence. And they move about life to acquire all the trappings of so-called success, because that's a lot easier to acquire, that's a lot easier to manage than to deal with the anger of their woman, or to deal with the feeling of being isolated from their woman and their children and themselves. So what I'm going to try to do from time to time is talk about how not only we are wounded as men, but to also understand the process toward healing. And one of the things I'd like to say that men can do is to have the courage to speak the truth when you hurt. Have the courage to speak the truth when you're angry. And oftentimes the reason why men are violent is because they can't express in words the rage that swells up inside of them when they're being misused and abused and taken advantage of. Because it is well known that men don't express themselves too well, that we don't have very well developed verbal skills, especially about our feelings. So we get the stuffing beat out of us, we get the stuffing kicked out of us by our women who demand us to do what they know most of us can't do. Now I'm a surprise. I can verbally express myself very well. So women in my life have had a hell of a hard time with getting away with stuff with me, because I tell them exactly what's going on, and I tell them how to cow and eat the cabbage, and I don't back down, and I don't get worried, and I don't get scared, and I don't get terrified, and I don't get tongue-tied. And it gives women a lot of trouble in my life, and it's trouble that they well deserve, because women have been accustomed to abusing men verbally, and humiliating them, and then scorning them when they are not equal to the task that they demand of them. And I want you to know that every man that you're having difficulty with was brought here by a woman, 9 times out of 10 raised by a woman, 9 times out of 10 had manhood defined to them by a woman, and another woman says, he ain't a man. And my question is, who's responsible? Now, I don't want this to be heard, as I'm sure many will hear it, as a blame game, because it's not about blaming, but somebody's responsible. Somehow, some way, we are creating and are perpetuating men who turn to violence because they don't have the verbal skills. They're not connected with their sense of what's going on with them. And as I've experienced it myself, that if I didn't know how to F it or fight it, I didn't know what to do. I didn't have an emotional range available to me. And until I got into the company, until I got into the conversation of the men's movement and was allowed and allowed myself to be loved, allowed myself to be touched, allowed myself to be nurtured by other men, that dimension of my humanity was locked away from me. So I want to encourage men to get together with other men. Get together with your buddies, the buddies that you talk about sex and the buddies that you do drugging with, and the buddies that you do the things that you do, talk about business, or you go hunting with, and you go golfing with, and set some time aside to just have a wild, scary hour of just talking about what you don't normally talk about. Talk about the things that are really important to you. Talk about the things that really make a difference to you. And you'll be amazed what can happen in that hour. It's healthy. It's important that men have social groups. It's important to have men-only environments. It's not anti-female. It is pro-male, pro-self. And I quit the YMCA when they opened it up and forced women to come into the YMCA. And I've never rejoined because I consider that a violation, and it is a violation, of the space that should be there for men to experience the energy and the camaraderie of being in male energy. It's almost like demanding that their boys be allowed to participate in the Girl Scouts. And I think folks would find something wrong with that. And yet men allow the feminine to demand that no space that we have should be devoid of their presence. And I say that was wrong. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about how class movements have been manipulated and derailed and betrayed. And it's going to be entitled Smoking the Bees. Smoking the Bees. And we're going to talk about how the labor movement was betrayed and derailed. We're going to talk about how the civil rights movement was betrayed and derailed. And the women's movement and the men's movement. All of the recent movements in my lifetime have been derailed and betrayed. And it's interesting that every one of these movements came out of the working class. Every one of these movements were a response to oppression, a response to something that wasn't right, and an attempt for people to organize and to respond to something that was desperately in need of correcting. And somehow, and not by accident, there's no magic going on here, that this class movement was derailed, sidetracked, and betrayed. So tomorrow, we're going to talk about that in detail on the program, Smoking the Bees. So we have an opportunity to begin to talk to men. And we have to forgive fathers, we have to forgive mothers, because girls need the company and the love and the energy of their fathers. Positive, nurturing, healthy, masculine energy girls need, because girls don't know anything about masculine energy. And yet women are the ones who have been defining manhood. I asked them, who taught you? How did you find out about manhood? Where did your great knowledge come from? As opposed to boys who were carried by a woman for 9 months, we know about feminine feelings. We know. We've been both. But a female has only been one thing. And as it's necessary for a boy to be brought into masculinity by the company and the society of older men, it's also important for girl children to understand what masculine energy feels like. what healthy masculine and nurturing energy feels like, so they don't get into these horrible relationships, these horrible compulsive and addictive relationships with men, trying to get the love and nurturing from a man when they really want something that only a father could have given.